Hello, lovelies. Welcome to Horror 421, the podcast, with your host, your friendly small-town horror author, Charles Campbell. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the frights in this week's episode.
This episode of Horror 421, the podcast, is brought to you by Terror Tour. Music is a killer. Virginia Morgan is the lead singer of a band called the Valley Rats. They have embarked on a regional tour. There is excitement in the air, but there's also something else. One by one, members of the band receive ominous letters at each stop. At first, they think it is a harmless prank staged by a fan. Soon, they learn it is something much more sinister. The band will have to come together to play the show of their lives if there is any hope that they can survive. The Terror Tour. Terror Tour can be found at valleyboypublications.com by clicking on the Shop tab. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Horror 421, the podcast. I am your host, small town horror author Charles Campbell, and today I have a very special guest that I'm excited to have on the show. I've admired her work for some time now. Her name is Rachael Redolfi. Hello, Rachel.
Hi there. How's it going?
Good. Did I get the name right?
You did, actually,
Awesome.
And you did very good with the last name too.
Nice.
No stutter either. So yeah.
Nice. Well, Rachel, I've seen, I don't think I've seen everything you've done, but I've seen quite a bit of your work through Henrik. So I've been jokingly calling some of this the Kuto Connection because I've had so many guests that have been in Henrik's films or have been involved with Henrik in some capacity. So You're another one in the Kuto crew. So thank you again for coming on.
So we've got our own little club now.
Yeah, yes. The Kuto Clique, the Kuto Club, the whatever you want to call it, but the Kuto Connection.
I like the Kuto Connection. I think that one's fun.
Okay, well, we'll roll with that. But I've had several of Henrik's cohorts on the show. So before we get into some of the specific movies and things, why don't you give the listening audience a little background on yourself, kind of how you came up in movies and some television. I know you've done both, so I'd like to get a little background on Rachael and kind of bring us up to speed on how you got to where you are now.
Well, it's kind of funny because actually acting was one of those things that I've always been interested in. I'd had an interest in it, but I was never one of those people where I was like, oh yeah, and I'm going to be in the movies and I'm like going to be in TV shows. No, it was just always a thought in my mind, like, I like memorizing things. So if I ever get a chance, like, I don't know, I guess I could be an extra in something or, do a play someday. I don't know. And one of my friends, Joni Durian, years and years ago, she was very interested in acting and had gotten in contact with several local directors in Dayton and surrounding Ohio area. And she told me, she was like, I met this guy Henrik and he might need somebody for just one scene. I really think you should try it out. I think you might enjoy it. I think you'd enjoy working with him. And so I went and did that one scene. And that was for, I believe that was Haunted House on Sorority Row. And just one little death scene, or, I was supposed to be a ghost or whatever. And I had so much fun with it. And Henrik kept asking me, he's like, oh, I've got another part. Like, you'll have a few more lines this time. Like, do you want to come back on? I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll do it. And, then finally it was like, okay, well, you're already on set so much. Could you like do makeup for me? And I'm like, well, I don't really know how, but I guess I could learn. So then I'm doing makeup and I'm acting. And then it's like, well, now that you're doing makeup and acting, could you like make some of the props? I'm like, okay, sure. I can do that too. And then by the time it got to Boggy Creek, it was just like, hey, can you just produce for me? Like, do you think you'd be interested in that? And I remember asking him, I was like, okay, well, what does the producer do? And he said, honestly, all of it. He's like, all the stuff you're already doing plus more. And I was like, okay, I'm down for a good challenge.
Okay. Well,
so yeah, that's kind of how it snowballed, all from one little scene.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, Joni was a guest on the podcast last year.
Okay.
She and John came on together. So they
Oh,
came
that's
on it.
awesome.
Yeah, they came on as a couple, and they were awesome. So yeah, I love the way you guys interact with each other in all of these movies. It's great to see familiar faces that are sticking together through the course of films. So that was really kind of cool for me to see. Uh, One thing I do want to ask you before we dive into some specifics around some of the films and TV stuff you've done. This is a horror podcast, so I want to know, when you were a kid, did you gravitate toward horror, or was that something that came later?
It definitely came later, but it's interesting because I would kind of say it was a matter of environment and not necessarily personal like taste, because I grew up in a very conservative Christian household. So like we didn't celebrate Halloween.
Right.
No horror. I think the closest thing we got to a horror movie was like maybe you could count the Terminator, maybe. Um,
Okay.
so like I had to wait to be 13 to watch Jurassic Park because it was too violent. So but the funny thing is, like, so I was living in like this super controlled environment, but by the time I was like 12, 13 years old, I was still sitting there talking about like vampires and werewolves and zombies. And no one could figure out like, where did you learn about this stuff? I'm like, I don't know. It's just out there and I think it's cool.
Yeah.
By the time I became an adult, I was like, no, I really am like interested in horror movies. And so now it's kind of like I I get to treat my inner child to these horror movies as like the experiences that I didn't get to have as a child, I get to have them now. And so it's kind of cool discovering things that are so old to people that grew up on it. And to me, it's like,
Right.
this is this brand new thing for me. It's really exciting that way.
Brand new and fresh for you. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, I grew up with that stuff, so I always had it. So I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have it when I were a kid. Well, now that you have it, are there any particular films that really stand out in your brain? Are you a fan of any particular genre within the horror category? Is there something, is there a movie that maybe you like? Oh man, that's on. Let me watch it. You got to watch it every time it comes on.
Definitely John Carpenter's The Thing.
Nice.
Um yeah, I love the atmosphere. Same with Alien. I love the atmosphere in Alien. Um I find the premise of just like being isolated and being hunted by something to be like primally terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I really enjoy those. I do like thrillers. Again, going back to the idea of like being scared primally.
Right.
Um, and on the other end of the spectrum, I really like the Hellraiser franchise. Probably has a lot to do with my conservative Christian upbringing where I just like kind of jive with that. We're like, no, I kind of get where this is coming from. Like I grew up with this.
Right.
So that's definitely a franchise that, anytime someone mentions like, oh, would you like to watch this? I'm like, I don't care which one, I'll watch it because I know I'm gonna have fun with it. So
Yeah, well,
so
that's
yeah.
cool. I'm kind of like you as far as the feeling of isolation and being, hunted, that kind of thing. One of my favorite films is called The Descent. So if you've never seen that, go check it out.
I
It
believe I watched that recently because it starts out where it's just them spelunking and then they're hunted, right?
Well, it starts out there on a wild water rafting
Oh, okay, okay. No,
adventure. Yeah, this may not be the same movie, but check
I'm
out The
thinking of something
Descent
else.
whenever you get a chance. And there are two versions of it out there. Both are the same exact movie except the endings. There's a UK ending and a US ending. I prefer the UK ending, but both essentially have the same ending, except the UK ending extends it a little bit, and it extends it in a very important way. So I don't know how you can separate those two if you go rent it or watch it
Okay.
somewhere. But yeah, it's a pretty cool claustrophobic monster movie, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
mostly a female cast. There's one
Okay.
dude in it, and I won't give it away, but it's mostly a female cast.
Okay, I get no. It definitely checks off some boxes for me, so I definitely think I'm gonna have to check that out.
All right,
S-
well now I want to jump into some of the stuff you've done, and one of the movies that I definitely want to get your take on. It's a favorite. It's one of my favorites, and of course, it's a Henrik film. Um, but it's Henrik and John, and you and Joni and Aaron were in this film, and it's called Devil's Trail.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me about the experience of filming Devil's Trail and how that came about from your perspective. How did this thing happen for you?
Um, well, this was one of the areas where Henrik came to me. He's like, "I've got a role for you in a film." He's like, "But could you also make some of the props?" And he's like, "It'd be really easy to make these props. I just need you to make, the little wooden figurines and like the witches' toys and everything." And I was like, "Oh, that's simple. I can do that in an afternoon." And I was excited because, reading the script, I kind of knew what all was going on. I knew that my character would be kind of a little bit of a fake out, and I was excited. I was like, I really want to participate in building this up to the audience and then just really tricking them at
Right.
the end, just pulling the wool over their eyes. So the thing the thing is, we were filming, I believe, it was either October or November. It was pretty late in the year. And it had been unseasonably warm leading up to that. But then, of course, the weekend that we all go to film out in the middle of nowhere is one of the coldest that we've had.
That sucks.
So, I felt bad for Henrik and John because they've got to stick out there, 12 hours a day. Just, what you see is what they've got. It's just the two of them and their cameras, and they're trying to stay warm during, all times of day and night. And then it gets time to film me and Aaron and Joni, and we've got to be buck ass naked. And it had just been snowing like 8 hours before. And so we're sitting there like we're trying so hard to be professional, but we can hardly even remember our lines. It's so cold. And and Henrik was doing great. He had, blankets and our robes ready for us, and he's like, "We'll do a take. We'll warm up for 15 minutes and then we'll do another take. Like we've got time. We can do this." But we were all so cold at the end, and we all just huddled up and had, like hot chocolates or like
Oh
coffees as soon
wow.
as we wrapped, and we're like sitting there like huddling, just like, maybe eventually I'll feel my toes again, but I don't think I can feel my toes now.
That would be
But
fucking miserable. That would be terrible.
but it's
Ugh.
you get so excited about the project though that like you almost forget about how much it sucks
Oh, I'm talking
because
about
you
yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. Being butt ass naked and it's freezing outside. No, I don't know. You have to give me a lot of hot chocolate and
bribe you just a little bit
yeah,
more.
yeah, a lot more. Wow.
But
I,
it was great, and, we had a few other, like, crew members that were able to come out and help us with different points in the shoot, and it was one of those times where it was just so much genuine fun that, again, we were so involved with the project, we were so involved with the fun that we didn't realize, "Oh, we've been working, 12, 13-hour days, and we're exhausted." Like, you don't realize all that until you get home, and you're like, "Oh, fuck.
yeah,
Why do I
you
feel so bad?" It's like, "Oh, it's 'cause I just made a movie," you know?
you want to fall out when you get home, right?
Oh my, yes.
Well, I really enjoyed that film, and I love the banter between John and Henrik. I know a lot of it was off the cuff stuff, but and I joked around with John about how he has to work on his slingshot skills. I'm a southern boy, and we used to shoot slingshots all the time. And I'm like, nah, playa, that ain't working. But I digress. So I want to talk about another movie, and we'll skip around a little bit. Like I said, this is really a laid back conversation. But another role that you had that was it was a small role as well, but it was a really good role. And I talked to Joe about it a couple weeks ago because I recorded an episode with Joe Kidd, but it was from Scare Waves in
Yes.
his story arc in there. I thought it was very well done. I think it's my favorite story in this collection, to be honest with you. And I told him the same thing. But from your perspective, how was it working on this anthology and that story in particular? And I thought you did a great job in that as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That was fun because that was my second role. So I I didn't know what to expect. I honestly didn't. And it was kind of like the blinds opened as soon as I got on set, and I was like, "Oh, this is what it's like to be on an independent movie set." Because the scene that I had done before for Haunted House on Sorority Row, literally I showed up and it was just Henrik and his cameraman and one other person with the lights and me in a shower. And
Yeah.
that was it. So I didn't quite know. And so when I got on the set for Scare Waves, as like met all these other actors, and there's people getting into costumes and people getting out of costumes, and there's people getting ready to set up a scene and people tearing down a scene, and then Henrik kind of ushers me in and he's like, okay, this is the room we're filming you in. We'll have somebody come and do your makeup in a minute. And I'm like, there are so many moving parts to this. It was honestly hard to comprehend at that point. And it was even more exciting because all I got to see of the script was just my bit, just my small part of the anthology. And so all I knew was there's going to be other stories, but you don't know what they are.
Right, right. Well, it's a great collection, but like I said, that one stands out to me a little more than the rest. Although they were all great though, but I did enjoy that one quite a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
and that was fun because I was actually working as a fine art model at the time when I filmed that. And that's part of the reason that Henrik approached me. He's like, "Hey, you already do this modeling thing. Like, you want to model and like say some lines too?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess like that's easy enough. I can do
yeah,
that." And that was kind of one of the funniest critiques I've ever gotten from a director is Henrik kept telling me, "You don't move enough." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm a model. Models don't move." He's like, "No, but this is a movie. It's all lies. Just move more. Like, you look like you're dead." So I'm sitting there like, "Okay, I guess I'll fidget." Like, this is
well, Joe
weird.
even tells you to stay still, right?
Yeah, it's like counterintuitive.
Well, that was the other thing, and I didn't ask him this. And now that you brought that up, was he really was he really doing something on that piece of paper? Was he just like
I believe that
scribbling
they
on it?
had some canvases that someone had already, like, painted on, and so it was okay that, like, if he got some brush strokes on it,
I
but they had
gotcha.
other canvases that were just, like, blank canvases, and so he'd sit there and, like, stroke on it, but it doesn't have any paint on it, so he's
Oh, I
just sitting
gotcha.
there doing
Well, you just
nothing.
heard how southern and redneck I am. I said, "Does he draw anything on that piece of paper you got in front of you?"
Well, there was paper in there too, so I
Okay,
think at one
well,
point he was sketching someone, so you might have been thinking of just a different scene.
no, thank you for trying to recover that for me, but no, that's not it.
I tried. I
You
tried.
tried, you tried. So I'm gonna jump ahead again, and this one you had a more significant role in, and I thoroughly enjoyed the chemistry between you and Henrik together. Two things I learned from this and Devil's Trail is never, ever, ever go camping with Henrik under any circumstance whatsoever.
It will
But it
end
was
badly.
in badly for you. It's found footage. Tell me about this series. I wanted to call it anthology, but it's a series. I picked up this DVD. I thoroughly enjoyed every single story on here, and again, I think yours and Henrik's is my favorite out of these. But they were all good. But yeah, you did a lot of work on this one, so I want to hear about it. Tell me about found footage and particularly that episode.
Well, found footage was it very much born out of the pandemic, because all of us filmmakers were going crazy. Because I don't know if anyone thought about it, but when you have movies, there's a lot of people on set, and that was the
Right.
one thing that we're not allowed to do at that time. So the thought was, okay, let's come up with concepts that we can film on our own, and we'll make an anthology series. And so it'll be a TV series that each episode stands on its own. And the concept for me and Henrik's episode actually came from, I believe, one of the times that we were actually camping together. And we were driving out to this cabin, and we were kind of just throwing ideas around, and we talked about like how scary it would be if you were camping and the end of the world happened, but you didn't know. And just what could go wrong with like trying to find civilization, but whoops, that doesn't exist anymore. And so you're just kind of left wandering in the wilderness, like how scary that would be. So when we were all kind of throwing ideas around for found footage the series, Henrik brought that one back up, and he's like, we could make this a much more compelling story as a short story for a TV show than if we tried to draw it out for, like a whole feature length film.
Right.
And so that one was actually, I think, part of the reason that it was so easy for us to convey our chemistry is not just because we kind of tolerate each other every once in a while, but also because we'd been bouncing this idea back and forth for quite a while. And so it just kind of came naturally to be like, okay, this is the situation and this is what we're filming. We've been wanting to do this, so like, let's get it done. So it was very fun in that way.
Yeah, well, it was a great story. So, I think I'm not sure. Is it still available on Tubi to watch?
It is. Yep.
Okay. So, guys, if you want to watch found footage, you can see it for free on Tubi, or you can go to himflix.com and get this cool DVD, Blu-ray DVD combo. I believe he still has copies. I hope he does.
Yes, he does.
Okay. Well, you can pick it up there. I have a signed copy. He might sign yours. I don't know if you're special enough to get a signed copy, but he sent me one, so hopefully you are. But anyway,
You gotta be one of the cool kids.
got to be part of the Kuto Connection, right?
There you go.
Well, what I want to talk about now is, like I said, the chemistry between the actors that Henrik has in his stable that he goes to over and over again. Tell me how that works. How do you guys get along so well? Or it appears to me that you guys are like a well-oiled machine when you get together. And I know sometimes you have very thin scripts, and sometimes you don't have any dialogue at all, but you make it work. So
Mhm.
tell me how that feels and how that came together with these cast members that keep showing up.
Well, to be honest, I think part of it is a good vetting process. I've got to give credit to Henrik is, he's a good judge of character. So if he meets someone that he knows is going to work well on set, he's like, well, then I just want to keep working with them because I know they're going to do good work. Um, but the other part is, once you get on set, there is kind of this group mentality that we're all kind of beholden to the project. And so it becomes a lot easier to make friends when you all have that one common goal of we want to see this movie or this TV show get made. At the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. And so it's kind of a good combination because when you have, Henrik picking good people that he knows are easy to get along with and easy to work with and, are hard workers, and then you put a whole bunch of people like that together in a room or, together on set, we all just kind of naturally gel. So it's kind of cool because, it's like making a family. And
Right.
once, we notice like, oh, Joe and Ia, they work on set really well. Well, now we can start inviting some of the other actors that they've worked with because like we know they have similar standards or,
Right.
we can start spreading out a little bit and adding more people to our family, but it always comes at that, that recognition of we've got to know that they're gonna fit in, that they're gonna gel with everyone. So it is cool watching those friendships and relationships develop because it starts out as being like, we want to make this movie, and then before you know it, it's like, hey, do you want to come to my birthday party? Or,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to go, go get some beers or whatever. Like then you become, the real family together. So
Yeah, well, it shines through in your performances, and you can kind of tell, like Joni and John, they work really well together. I mean, he's had them as
mhm.
brother and sister, husband and wife, all kinds of stuff, and they just seem to play off each other really well, and play
Yeah.
off each other so well that they're a couple now. So
Exactly. It's funny how that works.
yeah, it's funny how that works, right? It's like Tom Holland, what's her face? So yeah, that's
Oh
pretty
yeah, there
cool.
you go.
Zendaya, I think that's her name.
I
Uh,
believe so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But so far to date, what is the favorite thing that you've worked on, whether it's on the television side or the film side? What is your project that stands above them all, if you have one, something that you're really proud of?
I would say top 3
Okay.
would definitely be Scarecrow County, because I really enjoyed seeing how John Oak Dalton is kind of stretching himself as a director and is really growing and like really starting to get his legs under him and move in a direction that he likes. So it's exciting to see kind of that growth. So it was very fun being on that project in particular because John knew what he wanted. He wasn't asking, do I really want to do this? He was saying like, I know I want to do this. I want to make this movie and this is how I want to make it. And it's like, that's cool to see that development. And knowing that he wrote that character for me was very honoring because he said like, I just knew you're the person I want to be this character. So from the ground up, I was thinking you've got to do this. And that was a great honor. The next one would definitely be Found Footage, the series, because that was one that not only was it just fun to do, not only was it fun to get out of the house and like make something in the middle of the pandemic, it was also nice to know like we've all got that grit to just
Mm.
keep going. We didn't let life knock us down. We said, no, okay, these are the new circumstances. So this is how we're going to be creative under those circumstances. And I think it was an important lesson for all of us, and myself included. It was very important to learn, like, we have that stick-to-itiveness.
Right.
Uh, and then Boggy Creek is definitely in my top 3 because, again, that one taught me how tough I am, how tough our crew is. Because, man, you want to talk about how hard it is to make a movie. Making a TV show is much more difficult.
No, I'm
It's a
sure. I'm
lot more
sure.
involved.
Es-
So we survived and we made it and it turned out great, and I'm proud of us for that.
Yeah. Well, Boggy Creek is a great series. When it was on Amazon, I watched it, and then they took it off Amazon, so I bought it. So I have it, the digital version, and I think it was available on Tubi. It may still be on Tubi.
It
I
is.
think. Okay, so guys, you can go watch Boggy Creek the series. It's a great series, and Bigfoot isn't exactly the monster you think Bigfoot is in that series.
No. No.
Bigfoot's kind of a great guy.
Yeah, like Bigfoot, like I would let Bigfoot watch my pets over the weekend. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like Bigfoot is not all that bad. And I like it because you kind of grow to love Bigfoot by the end of the series. You're like, man, I really like this. I like this monster. He's not
Right.
he's not too terrible.
Yeah, it's the humans that are monsters. So
Exactly. Yeah, you've got to watch out for them though.
you got to watch out for the humans. But yeah, that was a great series. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know you worked hard on it. Now, there's another movie that is going to premiere soon. I think people can catch it on Tubi. I don't want to give it
Mhm.
away too early if I'm not supposed to, but I know it's available for people to watch, so I'd love for them to watch it. But I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, Jesse James Unchained, and I
Mhm.
thought you were hilarious in it. I thought you played a good, well, I don't know, yin to the yang of John Hambrick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could give our listening audience a little overview of what the movie's about, how you got involved in it, what you worked on in it, and a little bit about your character. I know that's a lot in one question, but I was so intrigued by this movie, and it's a western. It's not a horror
It
movie,
is.
so but it's a fantastic film. I watched a good chunk of it again last night to kind of prepare for this, but that would be
Okay.
my second time seeing it. But I'll be quiet.
Well, so the basic premise of Jesse James Unchained is after after Jesse and his brother kind of split ways, um, Jesse kind of laid low for a while and then decided that no, this, I can't just leave the life of crime behind me. I've got to do, one last, kind of like the crime heist spiel is like, I've got one last ride in me,
Yeah.
Well, the problem is people don't take too kindly to Jesse James being around these here parts. And
Right.
so my character, who is kind of a sassy bounty hunter, comes after him and manages to trap him. Well, the problem being they're stuck together by a chain and they've lost the key. So now not only are they trekking through the wilderness stuck together, another group of bounty hunters who are not nearly as polite as my character are also on their way to catch Jesse James. And so we've got to face down with them as well. And the way this came to be is this had been kind of a vague idea that had been bubbling around the Kuto pot. And finally, Henrik approached John Oak Dalton about it and said, like, I really want you to write this screenplay. And Dalton wrote it. And it was, again, one of those projects where he said to me afterward, he's like, I always knew, like, I wanted John to be Jesse James, and I was always envisioning you as being the bounty hunter because I really think that you would have fun with it. And boy, was he right.
Yeah, it
I
looked like
just
fun.
had such a blast with it. And I enjoyed it too because John really knows his stuff and he did his research, and he didn't just pull this information out of the sky. Like, sure, my character is made up, but a lot of the things that Jesse James talks about, a lot of things she talk about are things that were actually going on at the time. So it's, it's fictional, but it's got a basis in reality. So that's kind of fun that, it wasn't totally made up.
Oh yeah, yeah. And John strikes a great cowboy profile, you
Oh
know.
my, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he looked like it, and his outfit kind of matched his hair, so
Yeah.
he was like color coordinated, and I was like, this guy, he looks like a legit cowboy.
And I'm very glad you mentioned that because you asked what was some of the things that I did on set, and being the producer, one of the things that I did was I pulled together all the costumes. So I did actually color coordinate. I wanted all the bad guys to be the dark, grungy, grimy colors. And then
Right.
Jesse James had his own color palette, and then my character had her own color palette, so that everything was a little bit visually coordinated that way from my end.
Yeah, well, it looked good. It looked really
Thank you.
good. So he did a great job there. Um, Now you've talked about, you've touched on some of the challenges you faced, but I want to go deeper into that. Give me some of the challenges you faced as an actor, as a producer, as a gadget a jack of all trades on these movie sets and television series, because I'm sure you've had challenges, and I'd really like to hear what some of them are.
Well, this is only for me, so I can't speak to other producers, but
Right.
my biggest hurdle to overcome constantly is human error and myself. Because if I was an automaton, I could do the job perfectly and there would never be any complaints. But unfortunately, I'm a human being and I
Yep.
make mistakes sometimes. So, that could be everything from, on Boggy Creek, I accidentally scheduled Joni Durian and Mike Holinsky, uh, I believe like 3 hours before their actual call time. So they
Ooh.
were just kind of like sitting around doing nothing. But see, that's the great thing about working with Henrik is another director and producer team, they would have been like, oh no, we just wasted their time. Like, we're going to be upset about it, blah, blah, blah. And Henrik said, no, they are going to practice their
Yeah.
lines for that entire 3 hours so that when their scene starts, we can get it all in one take. And then it's not a waste of time. We can get ahead of schedule and they can go home early. And it's like nothing ever happened. And so every 10 minutes, I would go back over to them and I'd be like, are you practicing? Are you practicing your lines? Where is your script? Your script isn't in your hand. You're not practicing your script right now. You need to be doing that. They hated it, but we got all of those scenes in one take.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
there was another time where a lot of these stories are Boggy Creek because, again, it was a big project.
Oh
So
yeah,
a lot of it goes back to that. But we were filming on a farm, and we were filming outside. And unfortunately, the farmer's dog would not shut up. And he's just doing his job. He's a farm dog. He's supposed to bark
right.
at people. So my job that night was standing there with doggy biscuits while they were filming. And anytime the dog would start to growl, I would hand him another doggy biscuit so that he wouldn't interrupt the take. And other challenges are I forgot to pack a saw one time for one of the scenes. And so we didn't have the right props. So, yeah, all of it is human error stuff that could have been handled if I was a computer. But
Oh
outside
yeah,
of that,
yeah. Well,
I've
it's
got to just make do.
yeah. Well, it sounds like sounds like the kind of stuff that happens to everyone every day. So that's I wanted to kind of figure out some of the challenges that you faced doing all this stuff because you do a lot of stuff and it's pretty impressive.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So,
So as far as, the costumes and the props, a lot of my job entails getting the costumes ready, which mostly just means browsing on Amazon and then sending links to Henrik and saying, we need this for the movie.
right,
And either he'll say, okay, I'll buy it right now, or he'll say, hey, it's kind of expensive. Can you find it cheaper on like eBay?
right.
For the makeup, it really is just get all the actors in a line, and I kind of just get them looking as pretty as I can. Might occasionally say like, hey, your hair's kind of messed up. Can I comb it a little bit? Or, hey, I noticed like you got a little thing going on right here. I'm going to cover that up a little bit. And then the other producer stuff is just, booking locations, getting in touch with actors, making schedules, trying to get all of the schedules to line up. And making sure that everything is ready to go, which again, inevitably you'll forget something.
Yeah, yeah.
But you try to do your best.
Well, I've asked you about your challenges. I want to flip that question, and you've already gave me your top three, but what are some moments of elation for you? Some things that went really, really right, and you were elated at the outcome. I'm curious, on that side of the coin, what are some of your big wins in your career so far?
Um, I would say the kind of end climactic scene of Boggy Creek really sticks out to me. Um, because first off, it's just a fun, open-ended. It's not really an end. You know that the story could keep going on. The characters are probably still out there hunting down Bigfoot,
Right.
but it was a nice little way to say like we're done with the story for now. And it was so beautiful to see all of the cast and crew come together for those last few scenes, for those last few shots. And even though we're tired and exhausted and, hungry and grumpy and, somebody's got to use the bathroom and somebody's feeling sick, we all come together and we gave it 110%. And boy, did it turn out great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And similarly, all of filming for found footage, the series, filming with Henrik, all like every single bit of it, I was like, man, we are doing great. Like we are really doing that thing that we wanted to do. And as far as my acting, um, I think that Jesse James Unchained, the scene around the campfire, I think was one of those moments where we got done doing a take and everyone just kind of sat around solemnly not saying anything for a few moments. And I was
That
like,
was a
okay,
that was a
I
great
did good.
scene. Yeah, that was a
I did
great
good.
scene. Guys, go check out Jesse James Unchained on Tubi. I don't know if you guys are going to have a DVD available of that sometime in the future, but
I know it will be, but it's being distributed by someone else, so I'm not
oh,
certain
okay,
when,
how
but
it's
I
going to
know
come
it's
out.
coming.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Awesome. Well, we've talked about a lot of things that you've done and some things that are coming out very soon. Are you involved in Smart House? Are you involved in that project?
I did one scene
Okay.
and I provided a voice that kind of shows up in the background from what I've been told. I haven't actually seen it yet. But
Okay.
from what I've been told is the voiceover that I did is used in the background in like one or two scenes. And I did one scene where you just kind of see me and I guess it explains a little bit about the villain.
I got you.
Um so I wasn't heavily involved with that one.
Okay.
Um
Well, that's another one I'm looking forward to seeing. But my question was going to be: you've done a lot so far, but what are your aspirations as an actor, well, producer? Do you want to go full fledged behind the camera and direct something? Have you directed something? I didn't ask that question. Maybe you've already directed something, and I don't know. But
um in well, I did direct something in high school.
okay,
Um, it was a very enlightening experience, and what that one experience from high school told me is I don't necessarily like directing. I like the production aspect, but I may eventually try directing again. Maybe having, 2 or 3 decades of experience, I might enjoy directing in some capacity now. But yeah, in high school, I was just way too frustrated with the actors. I was just way too frustrated with everything. And I had to deal with the camera and I had to like answer all of everybody's. It was just way too much.
yeah,
Um, so that one, I'll never say never, but I'm not sure if it's in the cards for now.
gotcha.
As far as producing, pretty much anything that Henrik makes now, I would like to produce it. We work really well as a team, and I enjoy knowing that I can help him do his job as a director better by taking away the job of being producer. So I like that. You spoke about the yin and yang of different characters, but there is that yin and yang of our creative aspect. Is he can do the directing, I'll do the producing. So whatever he wants to make, I'll help out. And as far as acting, I know that there's um, one script in particular that Henrik and I have been talking about for years that I would love to see come to life. It's just a matter of finding the right time to film it. So, I know there's that one, but anytime John or Henrik say, "Hey, could you be in?" I'm gonna say yes.
Right,
So
right.
so I just enjoy working with both of them so much that it's like, "Oh, I'll just do it." Like, whatever they need from me, I know I'm going to enjoy the project, so
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
excited.
we had John on our podcast last year, and I'm very intrigued by him. And you mentioned Scarecrow County earlier, um, and so we'll go back to that a little bit. We didn't really talk about that a lot in detail. How was it working on Scarecrow County with John? I thought the movie was great, and I thought you were great in it. So uh, let's talk about that for a couple minutes.
It was a ton of fun. For my character, we did one weekend out in Indiana, where he lives, and then one weekend here in Dayton. And it was great going out to Indiana because again, one of the things I loved seeing is seeing how John is coming up into his own and seeing the group of people that he's surrounding himself with in Indiana was so cool because it's like, man, he's doing the thing. He's got his core group. We're gonna have to come up with like a cool name for them too, like the Dalton something. But we'll come up with like they're their own club now. Like it's
Right.
cool and meeting all these new people and making new friends and and then coming back to Dayton, it was really fun because we were pretty much just filming where it was just me and John and Henrik behind the camera. And so John's sitting there directing me. And so we got to get really intimate together about what is going on in this character's head. What is she thinking and feeling? And which directions can I pull that in so that we're really making the most out of her screen time? And it was so much fun because there were times where he would say, like, "This is the way I want you to do it." But there was a lot of times where he's like, tell me what you want to try. Like, as the actress, what do you want to do with this? And so there was a very good collaboration together of just this give and take of him having ideas and me building off of it. And then he'd kind of springboard off of that.
Yeah, John, he sounds like a very cool person to work with. And he, from what he's done, and I've kind of looked at, some of the things he's written and the things he has out there. And as an author, that kind of stuff always intrigues me. But he's a guy I'd like to get to know a little better. I'm definitely going to have him back on the podcast because, I think he's got a lot of great ideas that need to be expressed on film somewhere.
Oh, I absolutely have to agree. And he's creative and he's humble. And that's a rare combination that you don't find a lot. But that just makes him so much more open to collaboration, is because he knows he doesn't have all the answers, and he wants to work with other people to grow his creative vision. So yeah, I think that you should get to know him better.
Yeah. Well, the film that actually kind of introduced me to Henrik and all your cast of characters wasn't even a film directed by Henrik. It was a John film, and it was The Girl in the Crawl Space.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I got that movie, oddly enough, at the dollar store. There was a bin of horror movies, or mostly horror movies, and that cover intrigued me. I was like, wow, what can I lose, $1? So brought it home with a stack of shitty horror movies. Half of them were crap, but popped that one in, and I was like, wait a minute, this is actually good. So I sat down. I was like, wow. And then that's how I got introduced to a lot of the core characters that I see throughout Henrik's and John's projects. And, that's when I reached out to different actors and Henrik to kind of find out what was going on with you guys and Weekly Spooky and all that stuff. So that's kind of how I got involved in that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of cool the way things just come together and work out. So
yeah. No, and that's too fun that it was Girl in the Crawl Space.
yeah,
because that's not even one of the ones that people think of, Babysitter Massacre,
right,
they'll talk about that one. They'll talk about Scare Waves, like that
right.
one's very well known. And then Girl in Crawl Space, like, it's great, but not a lot of people have caught on to it yet. So I'm glad you got introduced to that one super early.
Well, that's the first one. I mean, I didn't know who any of you guys were. And like I said, I was literally at the dollar store perusing the horror movies because you'll get a decent one every once in a while. And I like indie horror anyway. I like to support indie horror. When I go to conventions, I'll buy indie horror, and even if it's not the best quality in the world, they're trying.
Yeah.
And they're putting their best foot forward, trying to be creative. And I'm the same way as a writer. I'm not Stephen King. I don't write the best shit in the world, but people seem to like it, and I have my own little clique, the Campbell clique or whatever you want to call it. But the people who follow me and actually buy my stuff, so I kind of get it. And
Yeah.
when the icing on the cake is when it's good, that's even better.
Absolutely. Well, and that's just a good reminder that you never know where you're going to find a hidden gem.
Yeah. Well, it was awesome. I mean, and it grabbed me right away. The opening scene, and I was like, oh man. And I sat there and watched it, and then I was like, well, what else have these guys done? So I started doing the detective
Yeah.
online, and then found actors' names and Henrik's name and John's name, and messaged Henrik on Facebook and found Weekly Spooky. I said, hey, I'm a writer. You want to read one of my stories? And 10 stories later, yeah. So
And the rest is history.
the rest is history. So it's pretty cool to be connected with you guys. And I've
Yeah.
always admired your work for sure. You seem to be passionate about it, and you know what you're doing, and it's good. And the chemistry comes right off the screen.
Oh, that is much appreciated. Thank you.
So I said, what are your aspirations? You touched on that quite a bit. Do you have anything that you're looking forward to that you're maybe working on? I know you talked about a script that you probably don't want to talk about yet, but is there something that you're looking forward to that may be coming out soon, or that you got in the fire that you're going to start working on, filming, producing in the near future?
Well, we're definitely going to be working on Babysitter Massacre 2.
Nice.
So we actually have Babysitter Massacre 3 in the can. It was finished in 2019. It's been edited and it's ready to go, but we can't release it because we don't have two. Um
Oh
yeah,
God.
so that's been really, really fun to deal with. So the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to right now is getting Babysitter Massacre 2 done. Um I've read the script that Henrik rewrote, and it's amazing. I couldn't put it down. I had to read it all in one sitting because I was like, "Man, this is so good, like, I just can't stop." And that one is going to be a really fun challenge because I will be acting and producing on it,
Okay.
and that's something that I can do, but it is a challenge because it's almost like you have to activate, like, 2 different parts of your brain at the same time. So that's why it's really cool that we've got such a great core group of people because it'll be so much easier for me to say, like, "Hey, John Dalton, can you help me with, like, this kind of producer stuff so that I can focus on doing the acting stuff so that, like, the scene actually looks good?"
Right, right, right.
Or, "Hey, can somebody please help me out and just handle these few minute tasks so that I can focus on doing the producer stuff and then doing the acting stuff later." So it's gonna be a lot of fun to, stretch those muscles creatively and also finally get this done so that we can have this trilogy that we've wanted for so long.
Now you say trilogy. Is this going to be a like a continuation of the first movie in some regard, or are they three standalone stories,
Well,
or are the two and three connected? Sorry.
so 1 and 2 are connected, but in the tradition of most, if not all, great, uh, slasher flicks, the 3rd one is really only connected in name.
Gotcha.
Now with the 3rd one, the girls used to be babysitters, but they aren't anymore, and it's only really brought up a few times in the script where it's like, "Yes, like when I was babysitting those kids a few years ago," or something like
Gotcha.
that. So, but that was kind of, uh that was planned, and it was we decided to go that way because it's like, man, but when you think about, like, slasher flicks, you think, like, Halloween and then Halloween 2 and then what was going on with Halloween 3? Or, all these other slasher flicks where it's like,
Yeah.
what happened with the 3rd one? Like, it doesn't even have anything to do with everything else, but they gave it the same name, so we're like, it'd be kind of fun to, like, do it that way on purpose, like, that's our
Yeah.
plan, so
I actually like Season of the Witch, so I'm one of those weird people.
Again, I got into horror later on in life, and so as an adult, I was like, "This is delightful. This is just fun, just storytelling. Like, this is
Right.
just a fun piece of cinema." So when I was shown it, I was like, "Oh, this is fun," and then I'd heard, like, people really don't like Season of the Witch. I'm like, "But why?" Like,
Yeah. Well, I lived during that time when they were coming out, so I went to the theater and saw it, and people were pissed. They're like, "This isn't that fucking Michael Myers in it." Blah blah blah. Like, well, I thought it was great.
yeah. Like, what wasn't to like? Like, it
Yeah.
was outrageous, it was gory, like, it was scary.
I
I don't
wanted a
know. I
silver
don't know.
shamrock mask when I left the theater. So
For real, though, for real. I think they sell those now.
yeah, I'm sure they do. They sell everything now. You can buy legit or bootleg. I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Yep. Oh wow. Well, it has been a joy talking to you, Rachel. And what I want to do to close the podcast out is I would like for you to share with the audience anywhere they can find you. If you want to share your social media contacts, anything you want to plug at this time, anything you want to put out there. Hey, look out for this. I'll include links to anything that you have in the podcast notes below. But I am going to be quiet and let you have the floor.
Okay, well, first off, you definitely wanna check out Tubi, because pretty much any of the movies that I've been in for Henrik or John Dalton are going to be available there, and as well as the TV series. If you want to check me out on Instagram, my Instagram handle is R Redolfi, Redolfi. You can always find me on Facebook, Rachael Redolfi. And I do also have a Facebook profile that's just for my artwork, and that is Redolfi Fiber Fantasies, Redolfi Fiber Fantasies. And that one's real fun because that's where I upload personal artwork for me. Occasionally, I'll show a little behind the scenes stuff of like making props or making costumes for movies, but it's a lot more focused on my drawings and my paintings and my sculpting. So it gives people a little different perspective on what I do in my free time.
I
So
got
yeah, that
you. Yeah, I
yeah.
want to kind of stop you right there for a second because you brought up a different aspect that I definitely want you to touch on before we sign off this podcast. So we might go a few minutes longer than we normally do, but tell me about your artwork. I really haven't, and that's shame on me. I really haven't noticed it as much as your film work, but I'm very interested in artists as well as a lot of the audience and people in horror and creative folks. So, give me a little rundown on what you do as an artist.
Well, I just like in my acting and producing, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. I do illustrations, so actually uh, Devil's Trail cover that you showed, I illustrated that.
Oh, cool!
So I've also done illustration for Amityville No Escape. I did one for Eric Whiting for his limited release of Primordial. I did one for one of Henrik's books. I did the cover. So I do some illustration work. I'm also a sculptor. That's what I focused on when I went to art school. But I decided that I don't want to be one of those normal people who like sculpts with clay or sculpts with paper mache or anything like that. I decided, no, I've got to be different. So I sculpt with wool. So I take wool from a sheep and I poke it with a special needle and I can make shapes out of the wool and then I can make sculptures out of all of that.
Oh, wow, that's super unique. I've never heard of that before. Does anyone else do that?
Yeah, it is an art form called needle
Okay,
felting. And it's a fairly new art form. It's only been around since like the 70s and 80s. But
okay.
it's been used before that. The probably the best example of needle felting that you would be aware of is the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special.
Oh, oh, okay.
So you know how the reindeer characters, they looked kind of fuzzy and
Yeah, yeah,
everything?
yeah.
That's because they were made out of wool.
Ah, the more you know.
So yeah, you just learned something new about non-horror movies too. But yeah, so I make, dolls, figurines, and characters, but I've done, I made like a bucket head figurine out of wool. I've made like a Michael Myers and I did Michael Myers, Leatherface, and Freddy Krueger, like little tiny, adorable little like figurines out of wool. And
Holy
those were fun
shit.
because like, yeah, they looked terrifying, but they were also like really, really cute too.
Wow.
And I also do 3D printing. So, and that one's a lot of fun because I can just make a design and then just throw it on my printer. And as long as the printer is calibrated, it will just make something for me. So that one's kind of like a set it and forget it kind of art form. Um, but
Wow.
what's really cool is making all that different stuff. I can tie it into making movies. So, I was in charge of, making the uh, fake dead cougar for one of the episodes of Boggy Creek. And so I got to use like all these different art forms that I'd learned. I'm like, wow. And now I'm making like a fake lion. That's kind of cool that I'm doing this.
Well, that is cool. Is your art, can people commission that kind of stuff from you? I'm just curious.
Yes, I can. So a lot of people will contact me privately either over Facebook or over Instagram, but people can also find me on Etsy, and they can either commission me on Etsy or they can just buy one of the items that I've already made.
Okay, well, if you can send me some images, I'll stick them on the end of the podcast so people can see kind of some of your work.
Okay. Yeah,
if
I
that
will.
works. That way they can. Yeah. No, I'm glad we kept going because I was very interested in that, and I'm definitely interested in the little horror figures that you made. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll see if I can pull some pictures up because I know that I had some pictures, but I don't know if I deleted them or not. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I know.
I'm just
I'm gonna
kidding.
have to get yeah. Well, as soon as I get home, I'm gonna be pulling out my hard drive. Like I know I have these somewhere. I've got to find them.
Oh my goodness. My goodness. Well, Rachel, it was a delight to have you on today. So glad I finally got to talk to you. Um,
It
you've
was
done
lovely talking to you.
you've done some amazing work, and I'm proud of the things you've done, and I know you're going to do a whole lot more. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I am Charles Campbell, your host, small town horror author. You can find me at valleyboypublications.com. You can buy a book or two or 13. Number 14 comes out on Halloween. It's called The Piano Witch. And I did have a printout of the cover around here. Oh, here it is. Local artist did the cover, John Stoney Cannon.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, well, this is on glossy paper, so it's kind of glossy on the screen reflecting, but yeah, you can pick up the Piano Witch, and the first story is going to be featured on Weekly Spooky in October to get you primed for it, and you can pre-order it now if you'd like at valuablepublications.com. You'll get a lot of cool extras with it if you do pre-order. You can find Horror 421 the podcast on Facebook. We have our own Facebook page, and I'll also host another podcast for musicians only called Backstage 421. So go take a listen to that podcast if you're into music. And that's all we have for today. So we'll see you next time on Horror 421 the podcast. Thank you, guys.
We hope you had a horrific time, lovelies. Thank you for tuning in to Horror 421, the podcast. Be sure to like us on YouTube and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.